All right. Good morning, everyone. We all good to go? All right. Good morning and welcome to this Metro Plan Orlando MAC meeting, and I'd like to call this meeting to order. My name is Keith Trace, and I'll be chairing the meeting today. We also have a team of folks working to ensure this meeting runs smoothly, and for us in the room and then those listening online. As we continue to meet in person, all committee members are required to be present here in the Metro Plan Orlando boardroom, while staff will continue to stream our meetings for the public for a public access. Now it is time for our Pledge of Allegiance, and I've asked Mayor Dowlis to lead us in the pledge. Thank you, sir. For the meeting this morning, we will keep our microphones muted unless you have been recognized to speak. I do ask that all committee members activate your microphones before speaking and then turn them off when you are complete. As a reminder, the microphone is turned on and off by pressing the blue button, the one with the little talking face icon on it, located on the screen in front of you. There are 2 public comment points in this meeting. Members of the public participating virtually who would like to speak may use the raise hands feature on the Zoom screen. If you are attending by phone, you can use the *9 to request to be recognized. We will be accepting comments by email and phone message before the meeting. The guidelines for those public comments are posted on Metro Plan Orlando's website at metroplanorlando.org/virtual meetings. We want this and all future meetings to be accessible to all. Participants may join by computer, tablet, or phone. If you need accommodations to participate in the future, please contact Metro Plan Orlando staff. At this time, I'd like to recognize Mr. Alex Trauger with Metro Plan Orlando staff for agenda review.
Thanks. Good morning, everyone. As you can see on our agenda, we really do have an action-packed or information-packed agenda. Some key action items critical to the transportation investment that this organization oversees, as well as some really good information items, presentations from FDOT. So we're looking forward to that. Last month, you likely received an email about some staffing changes here at Metro Plan Orlando. Nick Lepp, who many of you knew as our Director of Transportation Planning, has taken a position in the private sector, which has allowed me to actually move into the Director of Transportation Planning role. So thank you for that. And it also allows us as an organization to continue to promote from within. And in doing so, we've actually promoted Taylor Laurent, who's a professional engineer and a certified planner, into our Manager of Transportation Planning role. So you'll be working closely with her on a lot of our core products, long-range plan, PPL, and everything in between in the future. And you'll also have an opportunity to meet and work with a lot of our other staff here in the coming months. So stay tuned and you'll learn more about that. Relating to the printed agenda, nothing changing as it relates to casting, although I do want to welcome an alternate today, Member Britton from the city of Oviedo, representing Mayor Sladik today in her absence. So thank you for joining us today on notice. Other than that, we have received a request from Councilmember Guthrie. If you recall at our last meeting, the unfortunate news with the Maitland City Manager's passing, that was their alternate. Councilmember Guthrie had already plans about being out of town, so is absent present today. It has joined us virtually and has requested an excused absence. So if we can, at the appropriate time following roll call, that's your prerogative. So other than that, we'd like to move forward and take attendance, and I'll ask Ms. Kathy Goldfarb to go ahead and do so.
I'll ask committee members to keep microphones muted until called. Please say here or present when your name is called. Anderson?
Here.
Guthrie?
Here.
Gardner?
Here.
Dallas?
Here.
Sackett? Berstner?
Here.
Foraker? Henson?
Here.
McCann? O'Brien? Ramos?
Present.
Britton,
Here.
Smith, Trace.
Here.
Mr. Chair, we have a quorum.
All right, thank you very much. That completes the roll call. Since we do have a quorum, I also want to ask if the board's pleasure to consider Councilmember Guthrie's, due to the circumstances, that as an excused absence.
Motion.
All right, we have a motion by
Second.
Mayor Anderson and a second by Mayor Dallas. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, like sign? All right, that passes unanimously. We now will hear public comments on action items. Do we have anyone that wishes to speak on these items? If so, please use the raise hand function on your screen or press *9 on your phone keypad. When we call your name, the host will unmute your microphone. You will see a button pop up that says the host wants to unmute you. Please accept that prompt and activate your microphone. We ask you that you provide your name and address for the record, and you'll have 2 comments. Please hold your comments to 2 minutes or less. Are there any comments at this time?
There are no hands raised on these side, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. Are there any written comments or emails prior to the meeting?
We did not receive any.
And Keith will cover, and I will cover in the actual action item presentations, feedback received from the
Feedback, okay,
public.
perfect. All right, moving on. Next, we have updates from our agency partners. Mr. Tyler Burgett with District 5, you're up.
Good morning. Excuse me. Allergies again, I promise. Tyler Burgett with FDOT. Thank you for having me. I just have a couple updates on a couple of our construction projects. We have a resurfacing and bike lane installation there on OBT. That's the 1 mile from Central Ave to Bradshaw Road. This project just began construction last week, so June 30th. The second project, we are just starting the road closures for the road widening and drainage reconstruction, State Road 426. This is a couple months right there, and there are a couple affected schools. We're working with Oviedo High School and the other impacted schools during the closures. We're doing this during the summer because schools are out. The detour signs are up, and drivers should use Graham Ave to Garden Street as an alternate route. Currently, we've had only good feedback from businesses and residents, and we're moving cars and pedestrians safely. So it is underway. And those are the 2 updates. You have your construction report in the packet, and I'll take any questions if you have any.
All right, does anyone in the audience have any questions for Mr. Burgett? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Up next, we have Miles O'Keefe here with Links.
Morning, all. Not much to share on the links front of things at this time. Ridership continues to sit in that 55-60% range, pre-pandemic levels. We are experiencing staffing shortages, as many agencies are around the country, in terms of the provision of public transportation. So it is a strain on operations to ensure that service is out on the street as scheduled. So we're doing our best to not only retain our existing bus operators, but employ whatever methods we may be able to hire some new ones and keep them around with us. Also, in as Tyler noted, some construction pieces from our end. We're looking to begin construction on a couple projects later this summer or early fall. One being a reconstruction of our Super Stop Transfer Center at the Florida Mall. It will be doubling in size, with custom shelters, pedestrian scale lighting. At the time, it won't have real-time information, but we are building the conduit infrastructure to support that in the future. We're very excited about that project. But even more so is the Pine Hills Transfer Center. That will be located off of Belco Road and Silver Star Road. So a great relationship working with Evans High School over there, and it will have actually the Pine Hills Trail running through it. So that's going to be a huge amenity, big safety improvement for all bus travelers in the Pine Hills community. So we're very excited for that to get going. And that completes my update. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. O'Keefe? All right, thank you very much. Up next, we have Mr. Fine with the Florida Turnpike Enterprise.
Good morning, committee members. The only update I have is concerning personnel changes at the Turnpike. Victoria Williams, our former South Florida MPO liaison, has been promoted to the Turnpike Liaison Administrator. She will be based out of South Florida, our South Florida offices, but will frequent Central Florida from here from time to time. And with her promotion, the Turnpike has hired Mr. James Brown as a new South Florida MPO liaison. And he is also based out of South Florida and will be dealing with the South Florida MPOs. But with that being said, that is the end of my report.
All right, thank you very much. Any questions for Mr. Fine? All right, not very talkative today. Up next, we have three action items. The first action item is our MAC meeting minutes from June 2022. These can be found on tab 1 of your agenda packet. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved. I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like side? Oh, that was a 4. Opposed, like side? All right, meeting minutes passed unanimously. Our next item is the 2022, 23 to 26, 27 TIP found in tab 2 of your agenda. Mr. Keith Caskey with Metropolitan Orlando staff will present this information. If you could please hold your questions until the end. Take it away.
Okay, well, good morning, Mr. Chairman and committee members. Last month, I gave you all a preview of the new TIP, and there's a link to the draft TIP in your agenda and some additional information in tab 2. And we had our virtual TIP public meeting back on June 20th and had pretty good attendance. This slide shows the comparison of the attendance we had this year with last year. And of course, last year we had a total attendance of 105. This year we had a total of 88. So not quite as many as last year, but there were about 120 people that registered to attend the meeting. And those that weren't able to attend were able to watch the video later on. So we were generally pleased with the turnout. And there were quite a few questions and comments that came up at the meeting on various topics. I listed some of the main topics on the slide there. At the top is a comment or question that we seem to get almost every year about the need to shift more funding away from major capacity highway projects to help improve the transit system and bike and ped safety and to develop a more multimodal transportation network. Then there was a comment about the need to improve the convenience of Lynx's bus system and have more bus service at night. Another comment about the need to link the Bright Line and Amtrak to provide a seamless high-speed rail system in this region and throughout the state. And then there were a couple of questions and some discussion about the need for more audible pedestrian signals for the visually impaired and how the safety programs are helping to address that issue. And we'll be sending out a summary of these comments separately to this committee and the other committees. And we had a couple of polling questions at the meeting. The first one had to do with the major increase in gas prices, and it asked people how they changed their travel behavior as a result of that. And there were several different options, but the majority said that they are driving less and taking fewer trips, and then quite a few said that they're trying to work from home more, so that seems to be a general trend. And then the other polling question was just a trivia question, which is when did the first electric car debut in the United States? And most of the people at the meeting guessed either 1910 or 1930, but the correct answer was 1890. And then we had a group of panelists from local jurisdictions and agencies that were on hand at the meeting to help us answer questions, which was very helpful, and we really appreciate their participation. And the TIP will be presented to the board for final approval at their meeting on July 27th. So with that, unless there's any questions, we're asking for your recommendation to approve the new TIP.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Caskey. Any comments, questions, concerns? All right. Hearing none, do I hear a motion to approve the TIP?
Motion to approve the TIP is presented.
Second.
All right, motion by Mayor Henson, second by Mayor Dowless. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like
Aye.
sign? Opposed, like sign? All right, item passes unanimously. The final action item today is the fiscal year 27-28 through 34-35, very long time. Prioritized project list found in tab 3 of your agenda. Mr. Alex Trauger with Metro Plan Orlando staff will present this information. If you have any questions, please hold till the end.
All right, good morning, everyone. As promised, last time we met, we were going to be coming back and talking more and asking for your approval about our prioritized project list. Before I ask for that approval, a little bit of background and a reminder that this is an annual process, just like the TIP. Every summer, we come, we revisit the work program, and we talk about what's next, that next 5th, 6th year, what's outside of the work program. The PPL focuses, our prioritized project list focuses on the first 10 years of our long-range plan, our 2045 MTP, while all those other projects still remain cost feasible, but the PPL kind of provides that focus so we can really buckle down and get projects done in the near term. And again, this document focuses exclusively on federally and state-funded projects, but in some cases, local funds are required to advance projects and to provide the necessary match requirements. Considerations as we're developing the priority list, similar to the work program in the TIP, we look at funding eligibility based on project type, based on network. There's a lot of considerations that take place as it relates to which projects are funded. Of course, it has to be in our long-range plan, and it has to be cost feasible. And that places the importance on our long-range planning process in setting those priorities and what we can afford. But those last two items there, as I talked about in detail last month, are really the core drivers for prioritization and what's next. And it's really about funding availability in the current year or that next year and the project phasing. So sometimes top priorities, sometimes we're funding number 2 and 3, not 1, because that number 1 project, needs a little more time to cook in a different phase or requires additional funds to see it through. So we're using the funds that we have, spending the funds that we have, and taking advantage of that opportunity. So with all that being said, what's changed? What have we heard since the last time we presented this information to you? We did get feedback from our partners as it relates to kind of funding status. There were a couple instances, and I'll talk about them as we get to our PED bike list, that our local partners are funding these locally. So the City of Longwood, City of Orlando, and in the 2 instances, are funding these pedestrian and bicycle infrastructures with local funds, which is good news. It allows other priorities and the potential for other projects to rise. But those were changes, and I'll talk about them more. When we took this process through our technical advisory committee and our systems management group, there were a couple just overarching questions about our prioritization process in general, and how our process distributes funds, how that project selection and what that means. Based on the board's direction, they wanted us to follow the criteria, follow the process that they have, for this year. But what we're going to be doing as staff is holding workshops with our technical groups, and that will obviously bubble up to this advisory body about the prioritization process, why we do what we do, and potential changes, process improvements that we may be able to entertain. The I-4 Beyond the Ultimate was another item discussed. We're working with DOT to get as much information as possible. A lot of moving pieces as it relates to that project, but they are committed to reviewing and going through a value engineering exercise to define a project that could be implemented in the near term. So more news on that. We're coordinating with DOT, and as soon as real information is available so that we can have a productive and constructive discussion with our committees, we'll be holding and hosting that meeting as well. So with all that being said, not a lot of changes from the priority list. I'm just going to cover the ones that we have, or the ones that did change. And it's really exclusively to our PED bike infrastructure list. I mentioned originally, you saw we had a project for the E.E. Williamson Shared Use Path in the City of Longwood. That project is being funded locally. So that project came off. We actually advanced a portion of, or the engineering for the East-West Trail Connector. That's a project that the City of Orlando actually has in construction, so they don't need this project federalized any longer. based on the funding availability, kind of going back to those first bullets, we don't have another project that fits the funds that we have available. So these projects are going to be the ones that we're recommending DOT work into the next work program. So with all of that being said, not a lot of changes from last month. This has been approved, recommended for approval by our citizens group, by our technical and systems management and advisory bodies, and today we are asking for your recommendation today. Can answer any questions that you may have, but this is a roll call vote. Or excuse me, not a roll call, this is a voice vote.
Had me going there. All right, does anyone have any questions or comments on the prioritized project list?
Move approval.
All right, we have a motion from Mayor Dowless. Do I hear a second? All right, second by Mayor Gardner. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? All right, item passes unanimously. Up next, we have two informational presentations. First, we will hear a presentation on FDOT's truck parking PD&E study for the I-4 corridor. Mr. Mark Trebitz from FDOT will be presenting today.
All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Mark Trebitz. I'm with the Florida Department of Transportation in the Plemo Planning Group, and I'm here today to update you on our truck and freight site analysis, project development, and environmental study, PD&E study. You may have heard about this previously. We started with a study in 2018. We're now at the PD&E phase. So just giving you an update on the progress. So I wanted to start with the background and go into some of the extreme need for truck parking, not only nationally, not only in Florida, but specifically in our area in District 5. The trucking industry is indispensable to the American economy, and whether we realize it or not, plays a vital role in our everyday lives. All the goods that we basically use and consume were basically brought to us by trucks. So indirectly, this is something that is part of our everyday life. And truck drivers, as you know, are required to rest after a certain amount of driving hours. So they need safe, convenient, and legal places to park. We don't want them parking in off-ramps or in vacant lots or in residential areas. The trucking industry has told us that basically truck parking is their #1 issue. Statistic on the board here is that 40% of truck drivers spend over an hour searching for a place to park. So that's a safety issue in that you could have potentially drowsy drivers out on the road. That's not safe for them, not safe for other drivers. That also equates to an economic toll of $5.1 billion in annual loss in revenue due to lack of truck parking through wasted fuel driving around looking for a place to park, in that time lost, additional maintenance with that driving, and associated crashes. So this is important to the department, as our mission is to provide a safe transportation system that ensures the mobility of people and goods, enhances economic prosperity, and preserves the quality of our environment and our communities. So it ties very closely into our mission. All right, so looking here at this map, we're going to get into kind of a study that we did in 2018 to kind of determine what the department did this study, what truck parking do we have, and at the time 2018, and what will we need. So with the continued growth in the area, I think it's about 1,000 people a day that are coming here. The need has just continued to grow, and we'll have an increased need in the industry. So when we did that study, we found that currently, or in 2018 and still, we only have one provided truck parking site in Longwood. We all know of it. It's jam-packed with trucks every evening, overflowing. So it's definitely used, and many more spaces are needed. And between the eastbound and westbound on I-4 in Longwood, there's only 36 spaces between those two sites. At the time, 2018, it was shown that we need 481 truck parking spaces. So even then, there was quite a deficit. It's predicted in 2025 we'll need 750, and in 2040, 883 parking spaces. So you can see there's a real need to provide more sites, not just one mega site that wouldn't really work. As we've kind of worked with our industry experts, around 250 to 275 on a site is kind of when operationally it starts to break down. So you don't really want a site that's bigger than that. So we'll need multiple sites for that reason. Also, as you can see on the heat map here, it shows where the largest demand is for parking sites. So we're trying to distribute them along the I-4 corridor in District 5 for convenience and ease of access as well. And just having those sites where the trucks are originating at their destinations. Let's see, that goes over the study basically. So getting into the PD&E's purpose and need, which every PD needs to have, is the purpose and need is to identify, evaluate, and recommend viable candidate truck parking sites near the D5 I-4 corridor for public and or private development. So this project goes through our 4 counties that has I-4 in it, so Osceola, Orange, Seminole, and Volusia. And this PD is kind of significant statewide. It's a national issue, truck parking, but the state is starting to roll out studies and PD needs to start looking into where can we provide these truck parking sites along our critical freight corridors. And basically, that 2018 study found that I-4 is one of the more critical corridors in the state, and specifically our stretch in District 5 has one of the highest unmet truck parking demand in the state. So we're one of the first PDs coming out. So we've tried to really do more public engagement, do more grassroots engagement with the public, with the cities, counties, TPOs to make sure we get it right. So there's a playbook and a blueprint for the rest of the state and other districts to kind of use to be successful. So looking at the bottom of the screen here, our project development process to go over where we are in the project going through the phases. So basically we're in the PD&E phase now. We're overlapping with design to kind of accelerate this project and have a little more efficiency in the process. The numbers up here are the dates for design, right-of-way, and construction are for our first site. So currently we have funding for 1 full site, right-of-way, or we have design 2022, which we're in right-of-way 24-25 and construction 2026. Now a second site we have funding currently for design fiscal year 2024. We're right now have 6 preferred sites, so the other sites we're looking to identify further funding for. And as we get into the sites, the question is going to come, so which one's coming first? Which one is going to be that first one to construction? We've just now finished a lot of our public meetings, so we're at that phase where we're going to be starting to determine that and looking into comparing the advantages of one site over another going first. And the sites will be prioritized based on the readiness of site conditions and determined throughout the rest of the study. All right, so we looked at that heat map showing the demand, and we tried to locate our 6 preferred sites, as you can kind of see, around those areas. And the goal of the study as well was to try and at least have 1 site in each county, just to have those distributed throughout the corridor. We evaluated, honestly, hundreds of sites throughout, and it's a large amount of mileage along I-4. So we evaluated hundreds of sites, and we evaluated those down from those hundreds down to a potential list of sites, and now we're at the preferred 6. But we looked into evaluation criteria such as zoning, land use, site area, proximity to I-4, access, staying away from residential areas, priority to public-owned lands, having those sites near those industrial clusters where the trucks are starting and ending up, and through local agency input. And as we started it, certain sites floated to the top and really were kind of obvious. More difficult areas was in the Orange County area where there's a lot of residential along I-4 or just sites that wouldn't be as appropriate. So our criteria started to expand. So as you see in Orange, we're a little bit further from I-4. So going over the 6 sites that are preferred at the time, we have, starting in the west, 1 in Osceola, 3 in Orange, 1 in Seminole, and 1 in Volusia. And now the reason we have 3 in Orange is we're a little bit further from I-4. The sites are a little bit smaller than the other ones. So, and there's the highest demand for truck parking in this area. So we wanted to provide as much as we could, kind of equitably. And with these 6 sites, we'll have about 1,190 truck parking spaces. So we are above our goal of 883. And the reason we're above that number is, in the planning phase, even as we've been doing the preliminary designs, we lose a few spots to utility here or there as we're refining that design. As we get to the design phase, they'll further be refined. So we wanted to make sure we had a little bit of buffer to still meet our goal. All right, so starting in the west, we'll go over some of the details of the sites and where they are. So starting in the west, we have Osceola County Preferred Site, which is off of the Osceola-Polk Line Road, which is being widened, so good access to and from I-4 to the site that's circled there in red. It'll also have good access to I-4 from the future Poinciana Parkway extension. And this site will provide about 250 parking spaces. So this site, as well as all of them, will provide the following features: restroom facilities, vending, added trash cans, landscape and pond buffers around the site, as well as fencing. As we've reached out to a lot of our city agency partners, that was something very important to them, to make sure that there was a good landscaping buffer, a pond buffer, so it wasn't right off the road, completely visible. So we're making sure that that's included. We also have eco-friendly features such as electrification, so the trucks don't need to idle all night. They can plug in, reduces noise, as well as solar technologies to take advantage of. Other technology features such as the wayfinding signs, so those signs on the side of the road that say how many truck parking or parking spaces would be available at the particular site. We'll also have security features such as enhanced lighting, surveillance cameras, and 24-hour security. As we've reached out to the trucking industry, that one in particular is one that's very important to them, is security while they're on site and lighting. So make sure to include that as well. All right, so moving on to the Orange County preferred sites. The first one there, labeled 1, is off of Sand Lake Road and the Turnpike. So access back to I-4 through those 2 roadways. And these 3 sites that are shown here are about 3 to 8 miles away from I-4. So as you can see, we got a little bit further away, but the orange that's up there are showing the industrial or freight facilities. So we're putting them right, in the middle of where they're needed. So looking at Site 2, that's off of Land Street Road and access through 528 and the Turnpike to get to I-4. And there's a second site off of Land Street, actually across from our DOT facility, that also has access through Land Street and 528 and Turnpike back to I-4. So looking at the sites there, Site 1 has about 100 truck parking spaces. Site 2 has about 59, and Site 3 about 45. So as you can see, they're a little bit smaller, so that's why we have several of them. All right, so moving east to Seminole County preferred site. This one's basically right next to I-4, but not directly connected. It's right off of the 1792 interchange, so on-off ramps there. So access back to I-4 through 1792 or by 1792-46. So good access to this site as well. And this one provides 150 parking spaces. Moving further east, we have the Volusia County preferred site. And now this one, looking at the map there, there's very large parcels shown there with the red. That's just the actual parcel. We would only be taking up a smaller portion of that. What's shown there is over 1,000 acres. We'd only be taking about 100 acres on either side. So not that whole large piece, and it wouldn't be connected to 92. It would only be off of I-4. So this Volusia site would look more traditionally like a normal vehicular rest area that has direct on-off ramps directly to I-4. There's the eastbound and westbound here. The eastbound side has 275 spaces, and the westbound side has 250 spaces. And this site, in this area, it's more green, more forest. So this site has added features to minimize impacts to adjacent wildlife crossings or deer jump outs, such as the landscape and pond buffers we talked about, and wildlife fencing. Also, appropriate lighting. We won't have the high mast lighting. It'll be more directional, downward facing to keep things dark outside the site as best we can. Also, with this site here, well, I brought up that we talked about vehicular versus truck. All of these sites are going to be truck only. So these won't be rest area. They'll be truck parking sites. That's something I wanted to mention. So with these 6 sites, we'll have, again, 1,190 truck parking spaces to meet our goal of the 883 as we move through our PD&E study and into design. All right, my contact information is up here. Feel free to email or call me if you have any questions or want any further information. I've been presenting this here at MetroPlan for a few weeks now, so some of these dates up here for the public meetings have already occurred. We've actually completed our 8th public meeting for this project, so our round of public meetings are over. We actually did a very extensive public engagement phase for this. We've had 2 rounds of meeting with cities, counties, TPOs, MPOs, 2 rounds of public meetings where we met with each we had a public meeting in each county because we have a site in each county, and we presented that same information and same PowerPoint, all of them, so they knew what was going on along the entire project and in every county. If you want any further information, the project website is up there, and all the documents and presentations are also up there as well. What questions can I answer?
All right. I'm sure you have at least 5 or 6 questions. There we go. Aaron.
We don't have a spot, I don't think, in Winter Park, but I was just curious, I mean, when you look at the demand, I mean, do you take into account all the private truck stops, the pilot stops, and all that kind of thing? And how does that sort of correlate to what y'all do?
Sure. Well, so that 883, that goal demand number that we need are DOT state funded sites. So there are private Loves and Flying J, things like that, especially along 27, but those don't count towards our number.
Okay.
I did talk about in our purpose and need looking into public-private partnerships on our sites. So something like that, we would purchase the right-of-way, and then a concessionaire would do the design and construction. So that's something in this part of the PD&E that we're starting to look at more and explore kind of how that would work, reaching out to some of those businesses in the area and if there's any interest, things like that.
Great, thank you.
And just a question about the private facilities. About how much does that cost per night for them to park there?
I don't know that number off the top of my head. I'm sure it does vary.
Yeah, there's some premium reserve ahead. Many of them are free.
Oh,
because you're purchasing thousands of dollars of diesel and other convenience foods. And that's the trade-off, is there's a business model, for the Loves, the Busy Bees, the Travel Americas. And we don't have those large ones here in Central Florida. There's an Acme kind of down in kind of Taft, smaller site, the Longwood sites, Turnpike, that's more kind of Turnpike, system as it relates to kind of their needs. So it's what DOT is doing, I think it's kind of getting that opportunity to maybe bring someone in, but nevertheless, there's still a critical need. So if it needs to be solved kind of more rudimentary with a simple site versus, kind of entertaining a public-private partnership. But both are on the table. Those numbers, were forecasted a few years ago, but nevertheless, as we're seeing freight demand is growing in our region from previous studies, trucking goods coming in, out, through, within 95+% by truck, rubber tire. The economic forecasts that we've had done as it relates to that doesn't see much of a change as it relates to, trucking is still going to be key to Central Florida's kind of freight and goods movement. So this is one of those issues that's a top priority to Metro Plan Orlando. This is our #1 freight priority. So we're happy to see this. But as Mark mentioned, there's a lot more sites, a lot more capacity required, and it's going to have to take place in the coming year, so.
Perfect. And then the Volusia County site, is that a direct connect to I-4, or is that surface streets to get you?
Yes,
on
direct
I-4?
connect on
Okay.
off ramps, yep.
All right. Anyone else have any questions? Yep.
So this areas, they're not, you mentioned the private, the draw for the drivers is the gas, the diesel, the goods. What facilities or what are you gonna have there besides, I mean, I see some buildings on the DD design. Is there bathrooms? Is there?
Yeah, the
food?
buildings that are shown there, like here, there's 2 restrooms at this Volusia site. So the buildings that are on there are restrooms. Something else, as we've been looking into those public-private partnerships, one like this that's in the limited access right-of-way, by statute, we can't actually have sales of gas or food other than vending. So we do have those opportunities, which is kind of a trade-off. We were a little further from I-4 and some of the other sites, but we have that opportunity to do those public-private partnerships more readily. Not only through gas or food like that, but also even electrification. If we did that, or which we are looking into on the sites, we could even do a partnership in that way.
Okay, so the draw is only for them to stay there and bathrooms, because I know the drivers are always gonna take showers, pump gas, buy the food, snacks, so only vending machines.
Right, only vending, and it is free parking.
And all six areas are gonna have the downlighting, not to disrupt the lighting up above. They're all gonna shine down, all the lights on the parking lot?
Right, yeah, we wouldn't have the high mast in areas where it wasn't appropriate, right?
Okay,
It
thank you.
just specifically came up in this one with the wildlife and everything. Yep.
All right. Any other questions? All right.
Yes, I did have a question. So I want, and this is mainly the location,
Okay.
and I know it's off I-4. Are all those locations that you've chosen, are they pretty much rural areas? Like, are they impacting neighborhoods? Or how far from a neighbor?
They're not rural, well, Volusia would be, but Seminole's in an industrial area.
Industrial.
We're definitely away from residential.
Okay.
That was a top criteria. So that's why, especially in Orange, we couldn't really be near I-4. There's so much residential buildup, so we got closer to these freight industrial areas. Yeah.
Okay, and that, because my other concern was, and just from, history's sake, the populations that would be affected would be probably the minority populations. I want to make sure that, that the air quality, safety, and all that was mitigated in some way, because I know you had public meetings. So, okay.
Yep.
All right, Commissioner?
You might have already answered this, but, and I know it's early in the process, but are you considering charging stations at all at any of the sites?
It's something that's being looked into in the study. As of right now, I think it's being discussed on a statewide level, basically, if we can do that and charge for it. Because like I said, in these, if you're in the LA right away, you can't charge for things like that. So it's one of those things, as we're getting more electric vehicles, is that something that we would be entertaining in the state?
All right. Anyone else? All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Trabitz.
Thank
Our
you.
final presentation today is another topic of critical importance. It is designing and setting appropriate speed limits. Ms. Lorraine Bobo with FDOT will present the information today.
Very good. Good morning. Did I turn it on properly? Very good. My name is Lorraine Bobo, and I'm with the Florida Department of Transportation in District 5, and I'm currently serving as our safety administrator. This is a fairly new role to the department. Our office was only created a year ago on June 1st, so we're pretty new, relatively speaking. We have really refocused on safety, and I say refocus because safety's always been a focus in our projects and in everything that we do. But we're still seeing many, many fatalities on our collective roadways, and so as a state, we decided we have got to do more. We have got to have this really focused effort on safety. Hence, our District 5 secretary last year created our Office of Safety in District 5, and I was named as the safety administrator. So today, 8 people will leave their homes and not make it back home. On average, we lose 8 people a day on Florida's roadways, and that's state and local roadways combined. But that's 8 people that planned on going home to their families, having dinner, going to baseball practice with their kids, whatever it may be, and they deserve to go home. Another 49 will be seriously injured. This is what we are focusing on. Our goal is 0. Every single person makes it home every night. So what's going on in the Metroplan Orlando area? Last year, we lost 318 people on our roadways. 33% of them were our most vulnerable users. Those are people walking and biking. What we're seeing a lot of nowadays is a lot of speeding, a lot of aggressive driving. I was at an event yesterday in Brevard County encouraging people to look for pedestrians, and the number of people on their phones as they drove by it's sad. It's sad. They were not paying attention. These are the types of things that we're working on, trying to reduce. Those are the behavior side of things. What I'll be talking about with you later is what we're trying to do on the roadway infrastructure side of things. So just to give you some a point of reference, I averaged out the 5 years prior to last year, and it was about 280 fatalities a year. So we're not going in the right direction. This is not a problem solely in Metroplan Orlando's area. We're seeing this across the district, across the state, really across the country. So this effort is very much needed. So I want to share a little bit about the safe system approach. And I very purposefully said system, not systems, not plural, because all of the idea is all of these things need to happen for us to get to 0. This is a model put forward by Federal Highway, and FDOT has really adopted this way of looking at how we can make a difference. So in this model, it talks about that death is unacceptable. Even one is unacceptable. It talks about that humans make mistakes. None of us are perfect. I'm guilty of I just want to see who texted me. I'm not going to text back. Well, now I'm driving distracted, right? So I have to purposefully make sure that I'm doing everything I can when I'm driving, and I'm hoping that everybody around me is doing the same thing. It talks about that we're vulnerable. If we are in a high-speed crash, or we're a person walking and we get hit by a car that's going at a high rate of speed, decent chance we're not going to make it. Our bodies were not built for taking that type of impact. The idea that the responsibility is shared. This is not on drivers. This is not on people walking and biking. This is not just on the state or the county or anybody that's working towards it. It's really something that we all need to focus on. The idea that we can be proactive. Yes, it's good to look at what's going on along a corridor. Are there high crashes, things like that? But let's be forward thinking as well. What can we do to prevent some of these things? And that idea that redundancy is crucial. FDOT can do all that we possibly can, but if roadway users are not doing everything they can, we're not going to get to 0. So the idea is all of these things need to be happening to be successful. And then there's several elements to that as well. We have our road users. We have vehicles. You know, every single one of our cars should have a seat belt in it. I know my car has even more added safety features to help keep me safe. Safe speeds. How do we get those speeds lower on those roadways so that people do survive if they are in a crash? Making our roadways safer. And then that post-crash care, that golden hour of getting folks the attention they need as quickly as possible. So all of these things come together to help us get to 0. So before we would talk a lot about let's prevent crashes. And while we still do focus on that, it's more now how do we affect a change so that if you are involved with that crash, that you walk away from it and that you are not killed in it. Before it was, we just need to purely focus on human behavior. It's still a focus, but now it's people are going to make mistakes, so how do we best design for that? Controlling the speed is important, and what's important about that is the effects of that speed and that kinetic energy. I talked about how we're all responsible. This is not just on one group or party. We all can make that difference. And I mentioned also about not just looking at the crash history, but also identifying, hey, this corridor has a lot of elements that this corridor does, and this one has a lot of crashes. Why don't we implement those same things over here and being proactive about it? So what I'm going to focus on today is the speeding category. We're working on a lot of different things at the department, but today I'll just share about what we're working on from a speeding standpoint. So why is that important? This graphic is really just showing you simple physics. The faster you're going, the longer it's going to take for that vehicle to stop if they see something up ahead. So it may be a pedestrian, it may be somebody that's riding their bike. It may be you're on I-4 and there's a slowdown up ahead. You know, the faster you're going, the longer the distance is that you're going to need to stop properly. But why else does that matter? If you are traveling at 40 miles per hour and a pedestrian, person biking or walking is hit, they have a 10% chance of survival. 40 miles per hour is not that fast. 10% of survival. 20 miles per hour, they have a 90% chance. So this is when you're looking at a roadway and you're looking at where who's using this corridor, getting that speed as low as we can, really, it's saving lives. So in 2019, FDOT updated our Florida Design Manual. Chapter 202 speaks to speed management. And what this chapter is telling our engineers and our planners is you need to take into consideration what's going on this corridor. A rural area is very different from a downtown Orlando area or an interstate. So there's all these different contexts, classifications. Every roadway is given a context classification. And then it gives some ranges of speeds to that designer to consider. And if they want folks to drive that speed, here are some things that they can implement into their project. So before, when we would decide what speed a roadway should be, we would have a design speed, which was usually a little bit more than the posted speed, understanding that people will likely drive a little bit faster, but we still want them to not go flying off the roadway, things like that. But now we're talking about our target speed. What speed do we want drivers to drive at? What speed do we want them to not be comfortable going faster than? So we take a lot into consideration. Huh?
You don't like 9, you're fine, 10, you're mine.
Right. I'd like for you to go whatever that number is. So now target speed is all the same. Design, posted, target. So that is what we are designing to, is that target speed. We take a lot of things into consideration, like I said, but it's really, I'm sure this was happened to me yesterday. We were out on A1A and we're looking there to lower the speed. So I purposefully drove without looking at my speedometer just to see what I was comfortable at. And I was going 45 and a 35 very easily. So I had to, wait, nope, I need to slow down. So what that tells me is that that roadway is going to need some things implemented into it. Narrower lanes, landscaping, things like that along the corridor to kind of make you feel a little closed in and go, ooh, I don't want to go fast down this corridor. And those types of things we can implement in many different places. So how do we set that target speed? We have a process within our district where our planning office, at the very beginning of a project, we'd like to do something on this corridor, we're going to resurface, whatever it may be. They will look at this corridor. What type of corridor is this? What type of range of speed should we be in? They do a lot of coordination with the locals. What does that community want this corridor to be like? They bring that recommended target speed to what we call our collaboration meetings. And in that collaboration meeting are folks from every single one of our offices within the department, safety, design, maintenance, construction, everybody. And everybody kind of gives their input. And, sometimes it's, okay, that speed makes a lot of sense. Sometimes it's, can we be a little bolder? Can we try for another 5 miles per hour? And we'll talk back and forth about why this project we might not be able to get as far as we want, but the next project we can. But it's a really good process to kind of talk through where we see this project headed. So when we talk about that target speed, we can't just change the sign panel. My experiment yesterday was just that. If it didn't matter what was posted, I was very comfortable driving at a faster speed than what it was posted at. So we have to do some geometry changes, kind of influence that human behavior on the roadway. And there's a lot of different ways. This is just a sampling of them. But that idea of slowing that traffic down and getting you through safely. That nice blend of mobility through the corridor for all users, people driving, walking, biking, using transit, but also making it as safe as possible for all of those different users. So that process that I described to you was when a project is, from the moment it's conceived, we look at that target speed. Well, last year, when our office was created and we were kind of starting to talk about target speed, we had a lot of projects that were well on their way. They had been scoped 2 or 3 years ago. They were in design. And as a team, we were like, these projects, especially a resurfacing project, it may not be touched for another 15, 20 years. Well, those are lives that we could be saving on that corridor. So we went through an effort and took projects that were already under design. They might be at 60%, 90%, wherever they were at. And we looked at them and said, what should the target speed on this corridor be? Are there things that we can implement into this project that keeps it on schedule? Maybe it pushes it a few months, but keeps it in the right fiscal year to save lives on those projects as well. So this graphic is just showing you kind of that range of those over 80 projects that we looked at. Quite a few of them, we dropped 5 miles per hour, which doesn't sound like a lot, but if you think about it, let's say it's a 45 mile per hour roadway and we go to 40. People are probably driving 55, 60. So it's really ultimately a bigger swing in those speeds that we'll see. There's a line up there for existing. It means we didn't change the posted speed. And you might go, well, that's not very bold, DOT. I thought you were trying to save lives. Well, what we're seeing is people are often driving 10, 15 miles per hour faster than what that posted speed is. So even though we're not changing the posted speed, we're going to implement countermeasures into that project that will get you driving the posted speed where we really want you at. So to understand that this is going to be making a difference, our Office of Safety is going to be taking all of these projects before construction starts. What are people driving? Let construction complete, then we're going to be doing speed takes again. Did we affect a change to that corridor? Did these countermeasures make a difference so that we can learn from that and understand the difference that we're making? So hopefully you've heard of that idea of Vision Zero. A lot of states, counties, TPOs, MPOs have adopted that idea of Vision Zero. City of Orlando has adopted, and Osceola County have adopted here in the Metro Plan area. And then you have FDOT's Target Zero, and you might ask, well, what's the difference, right? They have the same goal, 0 fatalities and serious injuries on our roadways. We definitely encourage our locals to adopt Vision Zero. It just, to me, it just shows your community that you want them to get home tonight. Over in Brevard County, they've had 10 cities already that have adopted, and their TPO is adopted as well. So they've really embraced that idea of everybody deserves to get home. There's a lot of opportunities right now, more than ever, on even a national level. There is that focus on safety. I know Metro Plan is talking about submitting for this federal grant, the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant program, which is offering money to folks like yourselves to create action plans and then ultimately implementation plans for projects and things like that. There's also a lot of great resources on creating some local road safety plans from FHWA. So I know this is June and we're in July, but as Mark said, we've been making our rounds to all the different committees. June was National Safety Month, and that's kind of broad, but what I'll encourage all of you to do today is wear your seatbelt. We are reading more and more fatality reports that people are not wearing their seatbelt, and that one act could have saved their lives. And put your phone down. It's hard, I know. I have a coworker that puts hers in her glove box because she does not trust herself to not look at it on her seat. Whatever you need to do to get home every night safely. With that, safety begins with me. Safety begins with all of you. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. I'm sure we have a couple of questions. Mayor Anderson?
So first of all, I want to tell DOT, thank you for putting the money up for the study of what we call Brewer Curve through
Yes.
Winter Park. We also call it, one of the best rehearsal Formula One racetracks, right now in the Orlando area. And so this is something that we've got a group of probably around 100 to 150 residents that are banding together to make sure that I take action and that pressure will go outward.
Yeah.
Let's put it that
familiar
way.
with that. Mhm.
But so thank you very much for making those funds available. And this is something that's coming up on our residents' agenda, and I'd love to have you come by and talk to us in Winter Park and maybe
Sure.
a few of these two of the things that have come up, and I'm just curious if there's an evolution here. This is a stretch of very wide, well-paved, smooth, correctly sized for 50 to 60 mile an hour Porsches. And it's a 30 mile an hour curve. Mm-hmm. And so we're really struggling with it. But two of the things that, we've prioritized this for police enforcement. It now makes up about 30 to 35% of all of our speeding tickets. It hasn't really changed behavior a lot, so now we're looking at speed cameras. Okay. But I think we're prohibited from using speed cameras to give out tickets. So I'm curious to see if there's any movement on that, so we can avoid 24/7 monitoring for speed using our police force. And the second thing is, this is a stretch of about 1.5 miles where we don't have a lot of north-south traffic from our neighborhoods, but we have a lot of people that don't feel safe turning in and out of our neighborhoods. And we've been told that, we don't use traffic signals for speed control. And I just wonder if you've made any progress toward using traffic signals for safety, if not speed control. So those are really my two questions. Okay. Is, first of all, thank you. And then, is there any movement on those two fronts that
So
able to help.
the idea of the speed control with cameras, that's likely more on a legislative level. Not necessarily something that our office would be involved with. I'm wondering if speed feedback signs would be helpful? Like, hey, by the way,
We have those.
you already have those, okay.
And by the way, y'all put those in about 9 months ago when
Okay.
we first really started pressing this issue.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
and that team came out fast and they
Good.
got it done quickly.
Good, okay, that's right.
It's the
I
behavioral problem change that we're working
Yeah,
with.
so I'm aware that that study is going on.
Great.
Or going to be started. I'm not exactly sure where it's at. My guess is that it will probably recommend several countermeasures to, maybe it's reduced
Great.
lane widths, things like that, because I am familiar with that area. Speed control with signals, they really don't have affected change there. That's where a roundabout seems to be more effective in slowing you down. There's those geometry changes as you come into the roundabout. You're still moving, but you're going 20 miles per hour right through that. So there might be some opportunity there. I'll check in with the team that's
Great.
doing that study.
Well, I wanted to applaud DOT for sort of shifting, in some cases, particularly in our urban corridors, to a safety perspective as opposed to, volume per hour perspective. So thank you.
Thank you.
They're not really opposed to each other necessarily.
No, and I've been with the department for 23 years, so I am very familiar with kind of the old way of thinking. And actually, I think it was in one of the committee meetings a week or so ago, somebody asked, how does this relate to level of service? Because that used to be how we kind of
Right.
grade ourselves, like how many people are we getting through this corridor? And we don't talk about that anymore. It kind of got me thinking. I was like, that's not a measure that I don't know if we just kind of stopped talking about it, but it's kind of that change in culture of how do we balance that mobility and safety so that everybody gets home. So thank you.
I just want to tell you thank you, and, I've got 1.5 years in my first term to fix it. Glad you're on board. Thank you.
And then, that corridor, I think it's already 10-foot lanes, right? I mean, it
it's
feels
already
narrow
narrower.
as you go through there.
It does on west of Rollins College, but it feels like an expressway east of Rollins
Yeah,
College.
and if you go the speed limit, you're getting pushed out of the way.
But it's the same kind of thing. If you're not really watching your speedometer, you feel very comfortable driving 45, 50 miles an hour. And if you've got a good suspension, the curve doesn't feel bad.
Yeah.
We've thought about bricking the streets, but I think we've been told that doesn't work for y'all either. So we'll see.
Fix the potholes. Add more.
Hey, Dallas?
Could you tell, I've had a discussion with our police chief, and there seems to be some limitations for the police in terms of speed limits and when they can ticket or not ticket. And I'm wondering if you have in residential, he said, unless we do certain studies, if you go below 25 or something to that effect, are you familiar what those regulations are at the state level? He said they can't ticket for anything unless they're going 5 over the speed limit. We have a couple residentials that we need a little bit lower. I don't know if we're required to do a study on it or not.
I'm not sure. I'd have to research that. I hadn't heard that aspect of enforcement. I know what we've mostly been hearing is there's just not enough officers to do enforcement. So therefore, we're only going to go after the really egregious ones because we just physically can't get them all, right? But I'll have to look into that. That's interesting. I haven't heard that part before. Yeah, okay.
Did I see someone over here? Nope. All right. Any other questions? All right, I have one. Other than trying to get our groups to sign up for Vision Zero, is there anything else we can do on the local side?
Absolutely. Thank you for asking that. Obviously, you all have your own projects that you're working through your engineering groups and stuff like that. Encourage them to look at these resources. I'd be happy to give out my card today or Alex can get you guys my email address if there's any way that we can help in that regard. But also when you are maybe permitting developments or approving developments and things like that, encourage them to be implementing not just the minimum, but maybe it's a mid-block crossing because now you have an apartment complex across from a Publix or whatever it may be. And I know that there's some limitations in that, but just encouraging that overall idea of doing the best we can from a safety standpoint. There's also a lot of behavioral things that you can work on as far as sharing that message of, maybe it's in newsletters to your town or your city, the folks that live there, right? Sharing that message of, hey, buckle up, wear your seatbelt, don't drive distracted, whatever. I happen to do the newsletter for my homeowners association, so every newsletter has a safety message in it. Hopefully some of them see it. But there's all those little types of things that don't cost any money to just continue to share those messages.
Perfect, thank you. All right, thank you, Ms. Bobo.
All right, thank you.
All right, there are several items under general information in tab 4 of your agenda packet. Please take a look at those. We do not have an August meeting. Our next MAC meeting will be September 8th, so enjoy the little bit of a summer break. And the next Metro Plan Orlando board meeting will take place in this room on Wednesday, July 27th. At this time, do any community members have any final comments? All right, seeing none, we will move on. Our final public comment portion. If any member of the public wishes to comment, please use the raise hand feature and you will be recognized, or dial *9 on your phone keypad and we will unmute your mic. After you are recognized, please state your name and address for the record and limit your comments to 2 minutes. Do we have anyone online or on the phone wishing to make a comment?
There are no hands raised on the virtual side, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you very much. And then are there any written or phone comments that came in during the meeting? All right, thank you. At this time, we have no further business and we stand adjourned. Thank you very much.